Hello, welcome back to the Fashion Lab. As you can see, I have gone away and I've coloured in and added lots of bits and pieces to my illustration. Now it's time for us to start thinking about how to soften it with a few more different effects. So once again, I'm going to create another layer. I've also brought this in, which I might just cut, and I'm going to go a new layer, and this will be So we'll go with feathers and brushes for this one. And I'm going to paste that picture back on. What we want is over here, she's got this sort of flurry that's coming out that's like feathers. So what I wanted to do with that is I've got this picture of 3 feathers, and I've taken it into Photoshop, removed the background, done only a rough job, and then I'm going to come up to image trace and I'm going to go high fidelity photo. It's actually not a high fidelity photo anyway, but I'll get the best results from that. And it will only give me an ordinary one anyway, because I just did a screen capture on it. I'm going to come up to here and I'm going to go expand. I'm going to come down and just get rid of this background, and I'm going to keep this one at the edge here, so I might just marquee all of this side over here. There we go, and we just gradually get rid of everything. I could now get my lasso tool and just select the anchor points a little bit more by doing this, and maybe just select a couple there. The rest of this isn't going to worry it's not going to affect what I'm going to do, so that's fine. What I need to do now is I need to select this with my selection tool and straighten it up. And I want it to be sort of straight from here to here. So an easy way to do is make sure that I've got my ruler. If you haven't, use Control R and it'll bring up your ruler. Don't forget you can right mouse click and change the increments. I like to work in centimetres or millimetres. But what I can do is I can click and drag and bring down a guideline. I can then go Control 2 and place that in place so that it's locked. And then I can place this on here and see how straight it is. To be honest, it's quite good, so I'm actually just going to undo all of that and I'm going to go, that's fine. Now for something like a feather, you want to have it on its side. Actually, I'm going to get rid of that little bit there. You want to have it on its side if you're going to make it into the kind of brush that I'm looking at. Also, I see a lot of tutorials where they just drag this in and then they adjust the size later. I don't think that's ever a good way to work. I know that when we're doing fashion illustrations, we're always going to be doing it either A4 or A3. We're probably going to do it A3 and then change the size up to A3 if we need it. So I might as well make sure that all my brushes from the word go are sized so that they are the correct size to my artwork, so that we're working with the right size in the first place, and we just make sure that it's proportional here. It may need tweaking later, but now I can come up to brushes and I can click my brush. And this is an art brush. An art brush is when you're using that whole object and it will just stretch to fit the length of the path, whereas a pattern brush, it will repeat and repeat and fill in that thing. So we want it to be an art brush, and we're going to go OK. So with this, I can now delete that, and I could come over to my illustration, and I can, with my pencil tool, I can now, oops, that's not a very nice curve. Click on and I can draw my feathers in, and so it's a great way of giving myself some freedom to get some really nice sort of overdone feathers in. So this can work for if you've got an outfit where you've got lots of feathers, so it might be ostrich feathers, and so it could be a variety. I've got pheasant feathers here. Then I might get to a stage where I'm going, okay, with this brush, I actually want it to be a different colour. So what I'm going to do is I could change the colour by changing the hue, the tint, and all of that sort of thing, but I don't think it will give me the colour quite what I'm wanting, and I'll show you. So I'll create a second one of this, and I can come into here and I can change the tint and hue. So when I draw a feather, it's now gone to black, but if I now was to choose yellow, oops, make sure, it can change it like that. Now I can come back up to that brush and we could look at a different setting on it. So let's just go 10th and go OK. And you can see it's changed it like that. An alternative way of doing that is to drag your brush, your little brush out, and come up to here where we've got 3 colours in my yellow section here. So I could go, okay, let's get this, and I'm going to go, okay, I've got this orange, this, and this. And then I could come over, and maybe even a little brown, because the brown would actually, that might be a better colour in here, so that we're breaking it up a bit. So when I've got those colours, I could come over to my colour swatches, come up here and go new group, and we'll go yellow for feathers. So now when I come down to, oh, where's my little feather gone? I'll just find another one. There we go. So if I pull my little feather out, but when I've pulled my feather out, it's got a boundary box around it. So I want to select it, but then make sure the boundary box isn't selected. And I'm going to come up to my recolor and see how there's my yellow for feathers. And if I click on this, I can swap this until I feel that it's the colours that I want. But see how I've got the black in it, and that's really not working for me. If I come up to this dialog box, I can, at the moment it's got preserve white and black, and I don't want that, so I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go OK. So now it will just use those colours that I've got here. And when I've decided that, yes, that's what I want it to look like, so I want it to be sort of yellow with mostly orange or orange. There we go. So we're going to go OK. Yeah. And then, so once that's done, I make sure I've got the boundary box as well, drag it down, art brush, OK. I know the other method you could do, but that now, oh, how did that happen? So now if I do this, and I've got my little orange feather, I can draw, and we can gradually build that up. So that is a really great technique. Another thing that I've done is I have gone away and created a scatter brush. So to this, I'll just drag that out, so I'm not going to recreate it, is that I created some little circles and randomized them, in that I might start with something like an ellipse tool and give it a colour fill, but then I might come with my pencil and just make it a little bit wonky, because everything looks a little bit better if it's wonky, and I might even want it to look a little bit more watercolour, so I might create a second copy. So if I go K, and I'll just do this as 10, change my keyboard and hold Alt, see how that creates a second copy. And on the under copy, or on the top copy, sorry, I might just make that a little bit narrower here and here, and come to the one that's going to be underneath and double click on here and make it slightly darker. So when I put this over the top, when you look at it from a distance, it will create an almost watercolor kind of effect. So this is the same sort of thing I could do over here. So let me create a yellow one. In fact, this needs to be over here, and we'll move this one over between the yellows. So I've got this yellow, and I'll roughen it up a little because we don't want anything to look too, and then we'll create a second copy, and on the under copy we want it to be, oh sorry, the top copy, we want it to look a bit smaller, and then the under copy we want to be darker, maybe. And then we want this to be back on, so I use my keyboard arrows and stuff. So now I've got my little cluster of things. And then, so I'm going to come back up to my brushes, and I'm going to create a new brush. I could go new here, or I could click on this. And this time I want to do a scatter brush, and I'm going to go OK. And this will open up a lot of different options. I think the best method to do is to change all of this to random, because we really are going for a more free kind of feel. So we're going to go random, and we're going to go OK. Once we've done that, we can create a path that we apply this to. And you can see it's actually not as random as I personally would like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to double click on there, and this will open it up. And now with the preview selected or checked, I can change that, but then change this here. You know, so we can change this a little, maybe even, and we can maybe there. And that one I don't mind so much. There we are. I'm going to go with that for now. I'm going to apply to that. So you can see by having a stroke already, by having a stroke that you sort of have as a test square, you can see what you're doing. So now if we go back over to our layers and we make sure that we're over here, we can now get our pencil tool. Oops, we don't want to fill on this, we just want this to have this, and we can I actually want to do some more colour stuff to that before I you can see how if I do just a tiny little line I might end up with some that are just a little bit lighter, and I will come back to that. Okay, so the next thing that I might show you before we go is I'm going to go back to, I'm going to close the brushes and feathers, and I'm going to come down to the garment colour. So you can see I've got all the layers that I'm not working on a lot. So previously we used the blob brush, so if I turn off the background you can see where we're at. It's getting there, but we need a little bit more softer. So there's a couple of techniques that I'd like you to experiment around. So I'm going to come up to my brush, and then I'm going to come over to brushes, and I'm going to come up to my menu and go new brush. This time, as you can see, unless I've got something selected, something like a scatter brush or art brush will not show. But the one we wanted today is a bristle brush, so I'm going to go bristle brush. Okay, and we'll open up this dialog. I want you to try something like the fan, and we can go bigger, and bristle length, density, and I'm just going to go with this for now. So I'm going to come to here, and this will give us a really sort of soft effect, and so we can go over the edges a little bit on this as well. Oops, maybe not too close to her face. And we come in here. And what I might do is move the skin to the front, so therefore I'm not going to be doing that. I might now come up to my orange, get my eyedropper for my more orange colour. Back to my brush. Don't want to fill on it. Okay, there we go, so we've got that. And now I might come up to my red colour, so eyedropper. Come back up to my brush. We're going to come down to our bag and give it a nice sort of fill here. I might come to my softer pink now and make sure that it's better if I have it on my brush, because as you can see those ones there just ended up with all sorts of things happening there. There we go, maybe just a tad of pink through there just because I can. Okay, I'm going to come back to my layers, and what I'm going to do with my garment thing is I'm going to move my skin further up, and see how that allowed me to have all that flourish around it, and it gives it this beautiful soft colour. So what I'm going to do is turn off the background on this, and sort of you can see how this is gradually coming together, and I could continue on and fill it in a bit more. There is one more brush that you may want to add to this, and I think it's a bit like when you're painting, you want to do layers and you start adding things upon it. I've also would go back and do shading and things like that, but for this tutorial it would get crazy too long if I do that. The one other brush that I might use, so I'm going to come to my pencil tool and then come back to here. I'm going to come over to my brushes, and this time I'm actually going to go to one of the library ones. So I'm going to come down to my library, so books on a shelf, and it's in my artistic, there's watercolour ones. So something like, let me move this and open this up so we can see these. And what layer are we on again? Just double check. Yep, so we're on garment thing. I'm going to make sure that we've got pink, so that will be fine. So I'm going to just choose this one here, and I'll just show you here. See how we get this sort of watercolor. Oh, that's because we're not on it yet. So what I need to do is maybe do that. I don't know. Now we are on it. Okay, good. So now I might add a little watercolor here, and that's blowing out too big. So maybe what I need to do is reduce my stroke size down to something smaller, and that's always an option. So don't forget that you've got your there we go. Put a little bit there, a little bit there. So you've got all of those sorts of things that you can work with. And anyway, it's really worth playing around, but you can see in a very short time how we start to layer it all up. And the last thing that I might do is I might go back to this brush, make sure that we're in here, and I'm going to go back to here, and I'm just going to get my brush and make sure I'm in the right layer. Oh, actually no, I'm going to do it on that layer. I'm going to start adding these down here, but I can also, with this, you can change the size down, you can make it bigger, so you can also, you can do it in parts, so you can just do a little, and then you can do a bigger one. Then something that I think is worth considering is going back to your blob brush, but this time with your blob brush, I'm just going to click off that so nothing's selected, and with your blob brush here, I'm going to come and give it a white stroke, and you might want to, with your blob brush, come down and give some highlights, that's probably too wide there, make it a little bit narrower, to some shine. And so with those, once I've got those, I would hold my shift and do a multiple selection, and then come up to effects, stylize, feather, and the feather will create softness around the edges, and you can see if I've got preview on it. See how we've got that? So maybe that's too much, so maybe something like 0.5. Let's have a look and see what that looks like. And I'm going to go okay, and so that will give us a sense of shininess on something. I'd say this one bit here is a little bit too much, but there we go. So hopefully you can follow all of that, and hopefully you have some amazing illustrations. Thank you from Jennifer at the Fashion Lab.